My husband and I reside in Nebraska, married for 3 years. Both of us were marrying for the first time. I met my AP in August. Right after the 4th of July trip, I realized I was pregnant. Since it was my first time being pregnant, I was on the lookout for a natural healer or doctor. At that point, I was about 3 months pregnant. I decided to check out a local natural clinic, and that's where I bumped into this young male doctor, who couldn't have been older than 35. He had dark brown hair and a wedding ring on his finger. We chatted in his office for a bit. He told me he was a licensed doctor who respected natural and traditional medicine, but preferred naturopathy because it's calmer and better for patients. The thing is, he seemed really nervous the whole time. His hands were shaking a bit when he took my pulse. I asked if he was new to the medical field, and he sort of stumbled over an apology for being jittery. I could tell he was smitten, and I thought he was quite good-looking too. So, I asked if he could give me some advice about my pregnancy. He agreed, but mentioned that he'd be leaving the natural clinic by the end of the month. Curious, I asked where he was going next, and he just stopped and stared into my eyes for a few seconds. There was definitely some chemistry in the air, a real tension in the room. He finally told me he'd be working as an herbalist, not an OB/GYN, but he gave me the name of a midwife and his phone number. He told me to call him any time for medical advice. Yeah, right, medical advice. I tried to forget about him for weeks, but I couldn't help having a couple of dreams about him. I really wanted to give him a call, but I resisted the urge. From that point forward, when my husband was at work, I'd come up with all sorts of excuses to call him, whether it was a slight headache, a bruise, hormones acting up, you name it. Most of the time, we'd just chat on the phone. But every now and then, maybe about twice a month, he'd manage to slip away from work and come over. Then, one night, about 2 months later, he was sitting beside me on the bed, and out of nowhere, I started crying. I mean, full-on sobbing. He immediately wrapped his arms around me, comforting me, saying things like, "It's all right, let it out, I'm right here, I've got you. I'm here, you're okay." Between the sobs, I managed to spill the beans that I had fallen head over heels in love with him, and I had no idea what to do about it. He gently held my face, wiped my tears away, and confessed that he felt the same way about me. I asked him what in the world we should do next, and he told me he desperately wanted to be with me, but he'd respect whatever choice I made. He said if I didn't want to see him anymore, I should let him know. I reassured him that I did want to see him, but was just scared and confused. He said we could go in any direction I felt comfortable with for us, so I suggested, "Can we just go with the flow?" He agreed wholeheartedly. I leaned in for a kiss, and bam, there were fireworks. We ended up making love right there on the master bed. And let me tell you, being a doctor seemed to make him an incredibly skilled lover. The term bedside manner took on a whole new meaning. The first time was a bit quick, and he apologized, blaming it on nerves and my sheer beauty. Then he gave me the most mind-blowing BJ I'd ever experienced. I had no idea I could finish twice in one day. It was mind-blowing. Afterward, we cuddled and kissed, and he told me he believed we were meant to be together. I couldn't agree more. He started coming over at least once a week after that, sometimes even twice. We'd spend hours together, going on dates or just staying in, talking and cuddling. Sometimes we got intimate, sometimes we didn't, until I was about 7 months pregnant. He was an amazing and generous lover. Occasionally, he'd take a day off, but he'd still be on call for emergencies. On those special days, he'd take me out on dates that lasted the entire workday for my husband. One late November day, we went to the park, and when I got too tired to walk because of my pregnancy, he scooped me up and carried me to a park bench. I rested my head on his lap, and he tenderly stroked my hair. We had our first serious talk about our future. He told me he wanted to build a future with me. He said that no other woman had ever made him feel so loved, needed, and important. He opened up about being ready to leave his wife for me, hoping I felt the same. I confessed I was unsure about what I wanted. I loved him deeply, but I also had to think about our baby. Stability was crucial, and I even considered ending our relationship right then. Instead, I told him I needed some time to figure things out between us. He reassured me that he was willing to raise my baby as his own. He envisioned a future where we'd eventually get married and have more children when I was ready. His wife couldn't have kids, and he was looking for someone to start a family with. We both dreamed of having 5 kids someday. When my daughter was born in late February, I named her Clara after my lover's mother. Despite all this, I'm still torn about whether and how to move forward with this man. I love him deeply, and the thought of losing him is unbearable. But I can't ignore the confusion and uncertainty in my heart. Financially, my lover is better off than my husband, so I wouldn't need much from the divorce. In theory, it should be straightforward. However, I often find myself feeling lost and bewildered. Most of the time, I end up crying in my lover's arms. He's incredibly gentle and supportive, always comforting me and promising to take care of me and the baby. I initially thought I was going through postpartum depression and had trouble bonding with my baby. Now I believe it wasn't just depression, but the stress of being in a loveless marriage and trying to build a secret life with my lover. I'm still battling depression, but I love Clara and I miss her, especially since I'm not living with my husband where she is. I confided in my lover about my possible PPD, and he held me close, emphasizing, "So you're unsure about having Clara with us? Whether she's a part of our lives is your decision. If you feel you can't be a good mother right now, it might be best to leave her with him. But you know I will love and care for her as my own. Take your time with such an important decision. It could be the depression talking, not you." I told him I did want her with us, but I felt overwhelmed. My lover had been talking about divorcing his wife every time we met, claiming he had the papers and was ready to file. He desperately wanted me to file for divorce too, so we could be together. However, I needed time to think things through. A few days later, I called my lover and said I wanted to be there with him when he filed for divorce, just to make sure he was serious and not just bluffing. To be honest, I was leaning towards fixing my marriage at that point. I figured I'd call his bluff, and if he had lied about leaving his wife, I'd have a good reason to break up with him. He wanted to know why I wanted to go with him. I explained. First, because you've been a tremendous source of moral and emotional support for me in these past few months, and I want to do the same for you. Second, I want to see how the divorce process works in case I decide to divorce my husband. He responded, "So you're thinking about divorce then? I'd be happy to have you along and keep you company." I mentioned my plan to tell my spouse about us soon, and he seemed quite pleased about it. I genuinely intended to talk to my husband about our situation, but not with the intention of leaving him, as my lover had assumed. So that settled it. He had already taken the morning off work, so it wasn't a hassle for him. I had my mom take care of Clara, and we headed to the courthouse. While I didn't want to be nosy and hover over his shoulder during the process, I got a pretty good idea of how things worked. Surprisingly, it seemed fairly straightforward, even though I'm the type of person who had her mom help with taxes when she first moved out. He did indeed file for divorce right in front of me. He hadn't been lying. Afterward, he wanted to talk about telling my husband and my decision. I told him the truth, that I was still considering divorce as a last resort, and that I was committed to trying to work things out with my husband. He looked really disappointed, but he said he understood. I apologized, and he reassured me, saying, "No need to apologize, especially when you're dealing with so much mental strain. Important decisions like this should never be rushed. I just hope that whatever choice you make, it brings you happiness." He asked if this meant our relationship was over, and I confirmed it. His eyes seemed so sad, and he even had tears in them. I suggested, "What if we both agree to tell our spouses about each other on the same day?" He thought it was a good idea and asked when. I said, "Tomorrow." He paused for a moment, considering, and then agreed, even though it felt sudden for him, as he had planned to let the courts inform his wife. He told me, "You've just broken my heart, you know." I acknowledged it and apologized. He said he would text me tomorrow after he had spoken to his wife, and regardless of whether we remained a couple, I could always reach out if I needed anything. After he gave me a ride home, I couldn't hold back the tears. It was the day before DD Day, the big day. I talked to my mom and asked her to look after the baby for a few days because my husband and I were going through some serious problems that needed sorting out. Thankfully, she agreed. On D-Day, when my husband came home from work, I wasted no time. I sat down next to him on the couch and spilled the beans about everything. I held nothing back and answered all of his questions. He was in tears, and he confessed that he had sensed something was wrong, but didn't realize it was this serious. He mentioned he had chalked it up to pregnancy hormones and hoped it would blow over in a couple of months. However, when I explained how our daughter got her name, he completely lost it. He started yelling at me, calling me a ducking 403. He burst into our closet and began rummaging through my clothes, suitcases, and shoes, dumping them all on the balcony outside our front door. In his rage, he tossed my phone out the door, cracking the screen, and shouted, "Call your boyfriend and go stay with him because you're not staying here." He made it clear he didn't care where I went, as long as I left. So I called my boyfriend, tears streaming down my face. He asked, "Are you okay?" And I replied, "I've never been worse in my whole life. Please come get me. Please, I need help." He inquired if I needed him to call the police or an ambulance, to which I said no, just to come over. I started trying to collect my stuff from the balcony, but I was crying so hard that I could barely see. About 20 minutes later, he pulled up in front of the apartment complex and practically sprinted towards me. I mean, he ran up those stairs. He held me close, and the first thing he asked was, "Are you hurt? Are you safe? Did he hurt you?" I assured him that my husband wasn't like that. He helped me gather my mostly random clothes and shoes, which were all I had in my suitcases, and put them in the trunk of his car. We were about to leave when I mentioned I needed to grab my purse and wallet, so I went back to the apartment, and my husband kept his back turned. I told him, "I'm so sorry. Really, I am. I never thought it would end like this. I didn't want this. I don't even know what I want, but it's not this." All he said was for me to leave. And so I did. Once I had a chance to calm down, I asked my ex-lover what on earth I was going to do now. He reassured me, saying, "It's going to be all right. My wife left yesterday. She's staying in a hotel for the next few days, and then she's moving in with her parents across the state." He told me I could stay with him in his apartment for as long as I needed. He was thoughtful enough to stop at a neighborhood grocery store to pick up some essentials. He got groceries, tissues, and toiletries for me. He even got me a pint of ice cream and a chocolate bar, which was a sweet and considerate gesture. As soon as I stepped into his apartment, I completely lost it and started crying all over again, just sitting on the floor, shaking with deep sobs. It finally hit me that this was really happening. He knelt down beside me, held me close, and whispered comforting words in my ear, assuring me that I was safe now. He was here, and the worst was over. Eventually, I stopped crying, and he led me to the couch. He grabbed a comforter from his bed and wrapped me in it. He headed into the kitchen and told me not to move an inch until he returned. He couldn't have been gone for more than 10 minutes. While he was away, I found myself looking at his wall decor. It was one of those everyday moments that stick with you during huge life events, with tiny details etched into your memory forever. I'm feeling incredibly lost. It's hard to believe this is actually happening to me. I've been kicked out of my own house. He came back with a cup of tea for me and mentioned he was cooking dinner in a crock pot if I wanted some. I told him not to bring up food because it might make me sick. He understood but encouraged me to eat something soon to keep my strength up. The rest of the night was a mix of tears. Initially, he told me it was okay to let it all out, but after an hour or two of intermittent crying, he thought it might be best if I tried to detach a bit to give my mind a break. He brought me a cold cloth for my eyes, a piece of toast, water, and a Benadryl. He gave me the option to sleep on the couch or in his bed, whichever I preferred. For the next several days, my ex-lover continued being caring and attentive. He made sure I ate as best as I could, considering I still threw up daily for about a week, and ensured I took my vitamins and rested. He was always there, never leaving my side except for work. When he had to go to work, he would lock away knives and other things he thought might be dangerous, and he told me to call him if I ever felt unsafe. He was a bit overprotective, but I appreciated it. No one had ever cared for me like that. I asked him why he was doing all this for me, especially since we're not technically a couple right now. I told him I still wanted to try and save my marriage and hoped he didn't expect me to repay him for all his kindness. He sat down next to me and explained that he understood I was in a vulnerable place and a lot of pain. and he wouldn't take advantage of someone in that state by expecting anything romantic. He's being kind because it's something he enjoys. He mentioned he wouldn't have become a naturopath if he didn't like taking care of people. He told me he still loved me deeply and wanted more than anything to be with me. However, he also respected that I wasn't psychologically well at the moment, and his duty as a healer was more important than his romantic feelings, which I found incredibly noble. I really appreciate the fact that he's a caring and nurturing type. It seemed like his soon-to-be ex-wife had a career-focused life, and I think that's what drove a wedge between them. The state of our relationship is quite peculiar right now. We've pretty much ended our relationship. There's no more than hugs and innocent kisses between us. Both of us are hurting, and we're not even sure if we'll remain a couple. Still, he's letting me stay at his place indefinitely and treating me with utmost kindness and care. My emotions are all over the place. Every now and then, tears start flowing, and my ex-affair partner is right there with me, soothing me by stroking my hair and drying my tears. I can't even explain why I'm crying so much. It doesn't make sense to feel this awful when I'm with the man I love. Just a month ago, I would have done anything to be where I am now. But I can't stop crying or thinking about my last moments with my husband. I do appreciate having time with him now, and I like not having secrets. But this wasn't what I had in mind. I can't desire this anymore. I have to tell him I can't stay here and live with him. I know if I want to save my marriage, I can't stay here. I have to move out and get back on my feet as soon as possible, but I'm not sure if I can do it. I'm too scared. I can't stay with my mom. I'm afraid to tell her the truth about what's happened in our marriage. And I know she'd ask if I told her I needed a place to stay because my husband kicked me out. My ex-lover doesn't want me to stay with my mom because she still works, and he's worried about me being alone all day. I'm in a really bad mental state, and he's concerned I might have a breakdown. I'm hurt, scared, and terrified, and all I really want is to find a safe place to curl up and sleep until it all goes away. I still want to make things work with my husband, but I don't think I have a choice now. I'm overwhelmed and utterly exhausted. My ex is the only support I have left. I don't know how I can manage without his help, but I can't let myself rely on that. Clara is now with my husband at his apartment. I haven't reached out to him because I'm worried he won't take me back now. I realize I need to get my act together quickly, especially regarding how to gain custody of my baby. She means the world to me, and I have to start working on this. I'm faced with a tough choice. Either muster the courage to talk to my husband about reconciliation, or stay with the doctor and try to get custody. But I'm completely lost. Does the mother always get custody? Where do I even start? How on earth do I approach my husband, especially about the baby? It's all so overwhelming. I need answers and guidance. How do I make the choice between my husband and my lover? I don't have the same feelings for my husband as I do for my lover, but my husband has always represented safety and security to me. How can I win him back? How do I rekindle our love? How can I forget about my soulmate? I've read How to Help Your Spouse Heal from Your Affair, and it all seems a bit melodramatic. But if that's what it takes for him to take me back, I'll do it. How long does it usually take to move past an affair and get a marriage back on track for both of us? If I end up being with my lover, how can I ensure I get custody of my baby? My affair partner loves our baby as much as I do and really wants to raise her, especially since his soon-to-be ex-wife can't have children. Update. This morning, I opened up to my mom and told her everything that's been happening. Surprisingly, she was very understanding. She mentioned that when she was around my age, she left her first husband for my dad, something I had no idea about. I never asked her about it. My mom was incredibly supportive and helped me figure out how to approach my husband. She reminded me that men may come and go, but your children are your children forever. I should have turned to her weeks ago. Together, we went to my husband's apartment to collect my things, the baby, and all her stuff. To my complete shock, he allowed me to take the baby. He just wanted me to come back, and he promised to try to be a better husband. I suggested that if he allowed me to take the baby to my mom's house, we could talk this weekend about everything, work things out, and discuss our future. He agreed. My mom and I will explore the option of hiring the best custody lawyer we can afford, and she's willing to help with the costs. Then, on Saturday, I'll inform my husband that I plan to file for divorce. We'll have a serious discussion about our future. I'm praying that the fact that the baby stayed with my husband for a week without me won't affect the custody decision. But we'll have to wait and see. Mom says that usually, infidelity itself doesn't impact custody for mothers, but the fact that the baby spent some time without me might be a concern. Here's the situation. During D-Day, she stayed with my mom for 6 days, then spent 7 days with my husband while I was with the other man. Now, at the very least, she'll be living with me and my mom until Saturday. Mom is ready to go all mama bear on my husband with me to help me keep custody of our child. Mom assures me that she's here to help, and she's already informed her sister that my husband and I are probably splitting up. My whole family is standing by my side without any conditions. I never expected this level of support from my family, and I'm incredibly thankful. I'll propose changing our baby's name in exchange for having her with me most of the time. Perhaps he could have her on weekends or something. I believe that since I'm aiming for full legal and physical custody and I'm willing to change her name, this is more than reasonable. I hope to get his agreement before we go to court, so we can simply fill out the forms and move on. Given that I named her after my lover's mother, I know he wants her name changed, although he hasn't mentioned it yet. But I have a plan in mind if he agrees to it. I still want our baby's name to honor my lover's late mother, which is something both he and I desire. We discussed it, and he's open to changing her first name to a variation of his mother's maiden name and using a form of his mother's first name as her middle name. Let's pretend, just for clarity's sake, that my AP's mom's maiden name was Anna Schuyler. It's not, but bear with me. In this hypothetical scenario, the name change my lover and I agreed on was Schuyler Ann. Got it? My husband has no knowledge of my AP's mother's maiden name, so he won't understand the significance behind our baby's name. If he agrees to this plan, I'll have the best of both worlds. I just hope he's on board with it. Before we start searching for lawyers, I have a bunch of questions. Are there attorneys out there who offer free or lower-cost services if you lose your case? Can any lawyers guarantee custody? Honestly, what are our chances? Where do we even begin? The only thing in our favor is that my lover is financially well off, thanks to his parents covering his education costs, even though he's not currently practicing medicine except as a naturopath. Emotionally, it's a different story. I want my daughter and she needs her mother. Plus, she'd have a stepfather who adores her. If only I had met him 3 months earlier. We both agreed to divorce our spouses and be together about 2 weeks ago. He filed for divorce almost immediately, and as of this morning, I've also filed. So technically, we're not affair partners anymore, are we? When do you think it's appropriate to start calling him my boyfriend? Update. I've officially hired a lawyer now. Like all the others, he can't promise full legal custody, but he believes I have a good shot at getting primary physical custody, especially because I'm the mother, and our baby is still very young in breastfeeding, which is crucial for her. We can argue that not being able to breastfeed would be distressing for her, so she should primarily be with me, and my STBX can have generous visitation rights. I hope the judge is older or more traditional, so they can see things our way. I never ended up seeking help for my suspected postpartum depression, but I feel okay now, and it was probably just the typical emotional ups and downs new parents go through. Why did I go live with my lover and leave the baby with my mom for 2 weeks? My lawyer and I both agree that my STBX's behavior was offensive. He insulted me, threw my stuff out, and told me to leave the marital home. Feeling intimidated, I complied. Since I sent the baby to my mom's when I anticipated a disagreement with my STBX, it was actually a responsible move, prioritizing our baby's well-being. My mistake was not making sure my mom understood not to hand the baby over to my STBX. My lawyer says that's the main reason I shouldn't ask for sole custody. Meanwhile, my STBX is a real mess, and I've got most of his erratic behavior recorded. When he came over last weekend, he was clearly hungover, maybe even still drunk. He used offensive language, said hurtful things, and then sobbed, begging me to take him back. I've recorded it all. He's constantly texting me, switching between pleas and insults. His behavior is quite erratic, and he's just shown that to the courts. With his crazy rants and my willingness to offer him generous visitation, I come off as the reasonable one. So things are in motion. I might not get full legal custody, but I'm confident our baby will always be a significant part of my life. I won't be pushed aside. I had a minor women's issue today, and I honestly didn't think anyone would notice something like that. But my naturopathic lover did. While we were talking, he noticed something was off and asked if I had a UTI. I admitted I thought I did, and without saying a word, he went to Walmart, got a heating pad, Aleve, organic cranberry extract, and 3 types of cleansing tea. He made me a cup of tea and explained that my posture looked uncomfortable and in pain, and he noticed I hadn't gotten up to use the bathroom after our intimacy the past couple of days. He didn't want me nursing while on pain meds, so he offered to bottle feed the baby tonight so I could get a full night's sleep. Talk about attentive. I never want to lose this man. Tomorrow morning, someone is in for an incredible surprise. I'm worried I might not be able to keep my baby. My lover now knows that I won't share her. She'll either be with me and my lover or not at all. Or else is looming. My lover remains strangely optimistic. He thinks it'll work out for the better and that it's simpler than it seems right now. He believes there's nothing seriously wrong. I wish I could share in his positivity. I'm starting to get a headache and it's hard to type this out. I have a dentist appointment early in the morning, and I'm looking forward to it because maybe they'll give me nitrous oxide, and I'll finally have an hour of peace. STBX, you're such a jerk. Just take her from me. I'm absolutely furious. I can't even describe it. I keep going back and forth in my mind about my daughter. One moment, I feel like I won't compromise for him, even if it means giving up my daughter. The next moment, I'd do anything to keep her in my life, even if it means seeing him twice a week. Today I went to my GP, and she told me I have moderately severe depression and prescribed Wellbutrin. I have a follow-up in 3 months. Now I have to stop nursing because of these antidepressants, and I'm not sure how to handle it. It's making me even more emotional, and it feels like another way I have to let go of my precious daughter. Plus, since I can't nurse her, and I'm getting mental health treatment, my chances of keeping her seem close to 0. The only argument my lawyer had for me is gone. The appointment that was supposed to help feels like it's made everything worse. I'm so angry. He's taking my daughter, and he knows it. I can't stand him. When I was with my lover, I didn't hate him, didn't even think about him. I want to go to his apartment and make it clear that my daughter is mine, regardless of what the courts say. He means nothing to me. He's just the guy who happened to be there at the time. I've cried so much. I hope the medicine stops some of that, but waiting 3 months for relief seems unbearable. I hate him. He's taken my little girl. I don't need alimony. I might end up getting it because I never worked during our marriage, but I don't need it. My lover makes almost half of what my husband does. I don't need the furniture from our apartment. All I need is my baby, and I'm losing her. I've already lost her. He stole her. My lover holds me and says he knows things are beyond awful. He tells me he's grieving too. He holds me while I cry and sob. He says he won't leave me, whether I can keep my daughter or not. He just wants me to be happy. He'll get me a kitten, pay for grief counseling, buy me anything in the world. He says we'll go on an overseas vacation in August, just the 2 of us. And when the divorce is over and I've stopped mourning, will that ever happen? Will I ever stop mourning the little angel my husband stole from me? We'll try for another baby. One that's truly 100% ours. One my awful husband can never take. But nothing, no money, no vacation, no gifts, pets, or more children will ever replace the child my husband stole. I hate him. The next time I see him, my lover will be there, and will kiss and embrace right in front of his face. I still have my lover. I still have a source of happiness he can't take away from me. He can't take everything, no matter what. In August, my lover and I are going to England for our very first vacation together in the daylight. We've openly expressed our love for each other for the past few weeks, but this trip really seals the deal. We had talked about visiting England together, but I didn't expect it to happen so soon. It's going to be amazing. We're planning to stay there for 2 weeks. He's going to show me around London, take me on a train ride across the northern moors, and we'll do some shopping and visit the seaside. He just booked our plane tickets today, and all that's left is to pick a hotel. Plus, I absolutely love rainy, misty weather and having picnics in parks, so this trip is going to be perfect. On top of that, he has some distant family there. Aunts, uncles, grandparents. And he told me tonight that he's already informed them about his impending divorce and wants to introduce me as his girlfriend. Not a lover or a secret affair, but his actual girlfriend. I think that means we're officially a couple in the eyes of the world now, or at least we will be. I've been going through a rough time lately, but this vacation is just what we both need. It's a chance to escape, change our surroundings, and simply relax together as a couple. It's an opportunity to take our relationship to a new level and explore new emotional territories. While I'm still dealing with the stress of waiting for my soon-to-be ex to respond to my divorce petition, this trip has brought some calm and peace into my life. I have so much to look forward to, and it feels like a fresh start. It's like a new beginning, just like the song says. I'm feeling good. Update. Finally, I had a conversation with my soon-to-be ex last Wednesday, and we managed to come to an agreement. Initially, he wanted to fight for full custody, but he decided to give me a chance. He proposed that if I delayed the divorce proceedings for 6 months and attended marriage counseling with him at least 5 times, he would agree to joint custody, with each of us having the baby for 2-week intervals. I agreed to this, and I recorded it, which was a relief. Afterward, he hugged me tightly, started thanking me, and it was incredibly awkward. I didn't respond to the hug and just said, "I knew we would eventually find some common ground. Thank you." Then collected my things and left his place. I immediately called my lover and explained what had happened. He responded, "We'll talk about this after work." When he returned home, he seemed visibly irritated. I asked him what was wrong, and he said, "I don't know, you tell me. Going off to have love therapy with your ex? I don't know how to feel." His voice sounded angry, but his eyes showed pain. So I sat down with him on the couch, played the recording, and told him about the awkward hug and how I didn't reciprocate. I said, "It's just 5 sessions, 5 hours in total. That's all the time I'll be around him. I'm doing it for the sake of our baby." He relaxed, held me, and encouraged me to do what I needed to. I assured him that I'd be secretly recording everything and that he could review all my conversations during these sessions. Then, he surprised me by asking if we could go to premarital counseling together someday. He expressed discomfort at the idea of me having an intimate moment with my STBX that I hadn't shared with him. I was taken aback. Despite talking about a long-term relationship, mentioning marriage was unexpected. I happily said yes, and he seemed overjoyed at the thought. It felt like a fairy tale moment. He appeared happier and less worried at this point. I'm concerned that attending these sessions might hurt my lover more, but I plan to remain neutral, non-emotional, and avoid saying anything that my STBX could interpret as love, longing, or attraction. Now, regarding an update, I had my first marriage therapy session with my STBX on Friday morning. The therapist seemed biased towards my STBX. He spoke first, revealing everything about the affair, and I confirmed it all. Then, she started asking my STBX about his feelings, triggers, and what triggered him, as well as what I could do to help him with his triggers. I sat there in disbelief, shaking my head slowly. Finally, she asked me for my thoughts, and I expressed my astonishment at the situation, considering my constant emotional turmoil since I told him I was leaving and he kicked me out of the house. I thought about asking her how she could expect me to help him with his issues when we're going through a divorce. However, since it's only the first session, and I agreed to 5 of these to keep my daughter, I decided not to bring up the divorce. So the therapist started talking about PTSD and how it feels, like I don't already know, and how my affair might have triggered it in him. I just replied with an "okay," and kept quiet from there. At some point she said, "If you think I'm here to hold your hand and say everything's okay, you're wrong." Again, I just said, "Okay." It's been a couple of days now, and maybe I tried to block it all out, so my memory of the session is pretty fuzzy. I answered as calmly and non-confrontationally as possible, even though my eyes were welling up. It's clear this therapist isn't here for me, which is fine because I'm not here for her either. I'm here for my baby. When I got out, my boyfriend was there in the parking lot to take me home, and he noticed I was crying. I told him it was probably the worst therapy session I've ever had, and I've been in and out of therapists' offices since my father died. I started crying uncontrollably and he just held me. When he asked what we talked about, I told him, "We discussed my ex and PTSD, but besides that, I don't remember." He wondered why I couldn't remember, and I explained that I didn't feel right, like I was out of touch with reality. He took me to his clinic, where he made me herbal tea and hooked me up to the oxygen bar, which is just essential oils and 96% pure oxygen. He held me while I drank my tea, and after 30 minutes on the oxygen, I had stopped crying and felt better. We returned to our apartment. I took care of the baby, pumped milk, and went to bed. My boyfriend took over caring for the baby for the rest of the day. That night, I woke up feeling unwell, rushed to the bathroom, and got sick. My chest hurt, my heart was racing, and I couldn't stop shaking. Elle, my boyfriend, was there for me as always. He looked after both the baby and me the next day. I had a slight fever, but my temperature kept fluctuating. After ruling out pregnancy, Elle and I concluded that it was stress-related. My chest still hurt, and I wasn't doing well. My boyfriend thought it might not be a good idea to go back for the remaining 4 therapy sessions if they made me have such a severe episode and shut down. But I don't care. It's for my little girl. He questioned the point of going if these sessions hurt me so badly that I couldn't even care for my baby and had to stay in bed. However, I have to try. I can't lose my baby. My chest is almost completely better now. I've been sleeping a lot, only waking up to bathe and eat. It's been an incredibly tough couple of days, but I feel much better physically. The fact that I can write about it probably means I'm recovering psychologically too. My boyfriend has scheduled counseling sessions for me with a counselor who specializes in self-love for trauma survivors. He and I are planning to have a consultation with her, and if we find her suitable, he'll pay for private sessions. He was really upset about how dismissive the marriage therapy was of my pain, so he wanted me to have something positive to counterbalance it. He wanted me to experience kindness from someone other than him, so I could be sure it wasn't just him trying to make me feel better. Honestly, everything he does just oozes kindness. I've been through almost all of the therapy sessions now. After the latest one on Friday, my soon-to-be ex and I had a conversation. He actually agreed that when we do get divorced, he said if, but he's in deep denial, he'd let me have custody of our daughter. Finally. I asked him what made him change his mind, and he said he wanted to do the right thing and knew it was best for our daughter to be with her mother while growing up. He wants visitation on weekends, and I said I'd be more than happy to agree to that, especially while she's still young. We agreed to work out the details later. Elle, my boyfriend, was a bit concerned when he saw me talking to my STBX outside the clinic. When he picked me up, he got out of the car and asked what we were discussing. I told him he said he's going to let us keep Clara. The worry on his face disappeared, and he asked if I was sure he said that. I assured him that he did. Elle wanted to hear the recordings, but I didn't have them with me because we were just in therapy, and I didn't bring my VR. I explained that it was an emotionally intense and confusing conversation, and I needed it in writing or recorded. So today, Elle and I went to STBX's apartment with our baby and the VR. Elle waited in the car while I talked with STBX. He reiterated that he had thought it over and was willing to agree to physical custody for me as long as he could have visitation. I suggested that he could visit on weekends and proposed that we fill out the divorce papers together right there to make it official and uncontested. This way we could update our lawyers and it would be a lot less messy. So we sat down together, and I printed out the paperwork my lawyer gave me, my filing and his response, and we filled them out like 2 reasonable, friendly people. At one point, he looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "You know we agreed to wait 6 months before starting this, right? We're still waiting, right?" I assured him, saying, "Sure, I'll wait those 6 months for Clara's sake. I won't file until then." He mentioned that we could stop the divorce process once it started, and it didn't have to be the end. I acknowledged this and added, "Honestly, though, I think our marriage has about 5 more months to go." He expressed hope for reconciliation and couldn't believe his life had come to this point. I suggested individual counseling for him and genuinely thanked him for letting me have Clara, preventing a tragedy in my life. I assured him he'd still get to see her as often as he wanted. As soon as I left, I couldn't help but break into a grin. I'm still smiling ear to ear, and my face hurts from it. I told Elle that we'd completed the paperwork, and now it's a matter of waiting, filing, and more waiting. Right in the driveway, Lionel and I shared a kiss, and then we headed home. But not before making a stop at the liquor store to pick up some Nuit Saint Georges, the fanciest bottle they had. We planned to enjoy it by the fireplace, with pillows and blankets, and some soothing Chopin music playing in the background. Of course, I feel a bit sorry for my STBX, but after months of worrying about losing my child, he decided to do the right thing and let me have her. It's an enormous burden lifted from my heart. So, I haven't written an entire post in a couple of weeks, but I thought it was time for one. Things have settled down quite a bit. I'm in therapy, working on dealing with PTSD-related issues. My therapist is someone I've seen on and off since my first diagnosis of BPD years ago. Lionel didn't recommend her, but he joined me for a couple of sessions at my request. She seems to like him. We didn't delve too much into our relationship. Instead, we focused on my father's passing when I was 10 and how it impacted me and my thought patterns. We're trying to get to a point where I can identify and understand my emotions better, rather than just saying, I feel terrible. Things with Clara and my STBX have been relatively uneventful. We have custody of her most of the time, and STBX gets her on weekends. Sometimes in the evenings he comes over for supervised visitation. The first Saturday he took her, I couldn't help but cry, but I managed to cope by distracting myself with a movie on the couch with Elle. It also served as a good reminder of what truly matters as we planned and packed for our 2-week trip to England next week. We're excited about sightseeing tours, staying with his relatives, and going shopping and sightseeing in London. We've connected with his aunties, uncles, and grandma on Facebook, and they can't wait to meet us. So yeah, no drama. Things have been pleasantly uneventful, and I almost forgot to give you an update. I hope it stays this way. Until next time, I suppose. Update. My former affair partner is now my current boyfriend, and I'm about to get custody of our daughter. In just 5 days, we're going on a vacation to England to meet his family. Tonight, we baked brownies, acted silly like animals, and have been celebrating nonstop ever since my STBX decided to give me custody. It's been the happiest month of my life, and there are many more happy days to come. Also, the other day, my daughter looked right at my boyfriend and said, "Dada dada." I know she's just making sounds and can't really talk yet, but it was so adorable that we both got teary-eyed. My boyfriend will be a father figure to my little girl, and it makes me incredibly happy. My boyfriend and I are currently in England together. Our journey here was a complete disaster, and it brought out the worst in us for a while. Our luggage got lost, our flight was canceled and rescheduled multiple times, and we ended up arriving in England 2 days late. During this time, we saw each other at our most irritable and emotional moments. However, we managed to get through it, and our lost luggage was eventually delivered to us. London has been pretty awesome so far. We're staying at my boyfriend's aunt's house in a town south of England. For an English house, they have a lot of space and a nice yard/garden. His aunt mentioned my divorce, but my boyfriend's response was heartwarming. He said, "Nonsense. I'm quite glad my ex-wife is gone, for now I've met the love of my life. This is Ophelia and our darling daughter, and they're every bit the angels I've told you they are." It made my heart melt. During our stay, we've explored various pubs, restaurants, and shops in London. We head out every morning after breakfast and spend the entire day in the city until sundown. When we return home, I prepare Clara's things for the next day and collapse into bed, exhausted but content. Clara has adapted well to all the traveling, sleeping peacefully in her pram. It's been a wonderful experience, and even finding places to nurse her hasn't been difficult. Most cafes and museums allow it as long as you're covered up. We're all pleasantly worn out, and we'll probably sleep in tomorrow. A lot has happened in the past few months since my last entry. This is always a tough time of year for me because it's my baby daughter's birthday, followed by the anniversary of my father's passing just a few days later. There have been many exciting and emotional moments. Last month, I had a pregnancy scare, although it wasn't really a scare, because Lionel and I were overjoyed at the possibility of me being pregnant with his child. Unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be this time, as I got my period almost 2 weeks late. We both shed a few tears, but in the end, it was much ado about nothing, you know? I officially started the divorce process with my soon-to-be ex-husband. I thought it would be a straightforward process since we had already filled out the paperwork, but it didn't turn out that way. On the same day we filed for divorce, my paramour and I celebrated our daughter's first birthday in the morning. It was just the three of us, along with my mother and his father. Clara received some new clothes, a board book, an educational stuffed dog that talks, and the cutest pink fluffy bunny jacket you've ever seen. We took some great family photos and videos with Clara having cake all over her adorable little face. After they left, I went with Lionel, my paramour, and Boopsie, our nickname for our daughter, to my STBX's house to sort out some paperwork and officially kickstart the divorce process. STBX was unusually quiet, probably because Lionel was with me. This time, Lionel joined me, holding the baby and trying to clean frosting from her hair, while she giggled and kept saying "Daddy" over and over. Her first word was banana, but her second was daddy, and she directed it at Lionel. He got emotional, and I really wish I had captured that moment on camera. I offered to show my STBX the photos Lionel took at the party, but he declined. Instead, he dropped a bombshell. He wanted Clara to live with me. I was shocked. While I knew he might be okay with not having majority custody, I had expected, deep down, that we would end up with joint custody. But that wasn't the case at all. He told me he was granting me full custody, both physical and legal. I asked, "Are you sure?" He was absolutely certain and said he hoped Clara would have the family she deserved. He started crying and I tried to comfort him a bit. I assured him that he didn't need to worry about her future, as she would grow up with a mother and stepfather who adore her, and with a biological father who was brave and selfless enough to do the right thing and let her stay with us. I promised him he could have as much supervised visitation as he wanted, but he declined. He gave me an envelope saying it was for her college fund. I later discovered it contained a $2,500 check. Lionel and I hugged each other tightly. We had our daughter for good. I took pictures of the documents and had my voice recorder just in case. We picked up the paperwork and, along with STBX, went to the courthouse to file it, both of us grinning from ear to ear the entire way. Since we agreed on custody, didn't want alimony, and had no shared property, all we had to do was wait 60 days for our hearing. I had to let Lionel drive halfway there because I got teary-eyed. It was the start of our happy ending, but something unexpected came up that put a damper on things. Yesterday, I received a call from the local mental hospital, and I didn't think much of it because they usually call to remind me of psych appointments. But this time, it wasn't about an appointment. My soon-to-be ex-husband had been in the psychiatric ER for depression, and he had listed me as his contact person when they admitted him. He wanted to call and let me know. I was shocked and didn't know how to react. I just said, "Okay, thank you for informing me," and hung up. And then I burst into tears. I couldn't tell if those tears were from sadness or anger. Lionel walked in when he heard me crying, and I explained the phone call to him. His immediate reaction was, "That jerk! Now he might claim he wasn't of sound mind and try to go back on our custody agreement." I hadn't even considered that possibility. What makes it even worse is that my father passed away on February 25, 2003, due to pancreatic cancer, and my STBX is aware of this date. Could he have pretended to be in such a dire state on that day to upset me, get back at me, and possibly try to take our child away again? I don't have the answers. I just feel lost and overwhelmed by emotions that I can't even name. For the past couple of days, I've been constantly on edge. I haven't been able to sleep, eat, or even drink water since the call. I can't stop shaking and crying, and it feels like I've been having a panic attack that's lasted for 24 hours. I'm struggling to cope. Lionel held me, wrapped me in a blanket, and brought me tea, which I could only manage one sip of before vomiting. He tried to comfort me and suggested that my heightened emotions might be due to the difficult time of year, with the anniversary of my father's passing. He reminded me that I usually need more intensive therapy around this time, and that I had forgotten to schedule an appointment on the anniversary of my father's passing. He asked if I wanted to go to inpatient therapy, but I declined. I was afraid I might run into my STBX there, and I couldn't bear to leave my daughter even for a moment. Lionel understood and respected my decision, but he insisted that I needed a break. Being the incredible person he is, Lionel arranged for the three of us to stay in his father's guest house for the next 2 weeks. He even packed our bags. He practically had to carry me to the car. He also helped me set up an appointment with a grief counselor for Wednesday the 7th. He and his father will take turns looking after Clara this week, while I try to relax and process all these overwhelming and chaotic events. We've just arrived at the guest house, and I've had a glass of water and a couple of bites of dry toast. It's taken me some time to calm down enough to write about it, even though I've had to stop and lie down several times to catch my breath. I can't believe my STBX would do something so triggering on the anniversary of my father's passing. The audacity of it all.